A locked door marked the start of the end. In our home, Amanda never locked doors. She didn't enjoy it. She always claimed to enjoy a free flow. No secrets, no walls between us. However, I discovered our bedroom door was closed that night when I was going down the hall to get Lily's blanket from the laundry room. The knob was tight. I stopped and put my hand over the handle. The cool brass brushed against my knuckles. Amanda's speech was rapid and low, as if she was attempting to hide something. "Yes, I am aware of it. Stop worrying. Tomorrow," I said. "All right, I got this." Even though her remarks weren't directed at me, my chest constricted. Something dark and instinctive wrapped itself around my ribcage, a strain I had never experienced before. She paced. The rug muted her footsteps, but the rhythm was clear. Again and again, again and again. Twice I knocked loudly enough to be heard. "Are you all right in there, Amanda?" She halted her steps, dead quiet. Then she fumbled as if she were reaching for something, pushing it out of the way. "Yes." Abruptly, she changed the tone of her voice to joyful. "I'm all right. Just on a call for work. Give me a moment." The corridor felt cooler than it should have, so I waited for a moment. Then I knocked once more, this time louder. "The door is locked, why?" I inquired. This time, she responded more slowly, as if she were attempting to figure out a trick. "Lily keeps coming in sooner, huh? I'm wrapping a Christmas present for her, and I didn't want her to see. Christmas was 6 weeks away, you know?" Her tone didn't sound quite right. I stood looking at the door as if it were a problem that I had to solve. I didn't lock myself out with Amanda. I was on the wrong side of a barrier that shouldn't have been there, even though that was one of our unwritten rules. I ought to have ignored it. I should have dismissed it, I know. I told myself I was hallucinating and completed the basketball game by walking back to the living room. Instead of half-watching, I leaned in and put my ear to the board. I heard it at that point. A phone on silent buzzes against a hard surface, causing a brief and acute vibration. She was struggling with it, and I could hear her muttering curses. "Please don't call me," she hissed. I only needed to hear that. "Amanda, open the door," I spoke quietly, trying to convince myself that I was too calm. I wasn't angry. "Really, Caleb, I'll be leaving shortly. Go ahead and open the door." Amanda stood there while the door creaked open and the knob twisted. Her countenance was stiff, and her hair was somewhat mussed. There was no sign of her phone. She practiced smiling at me, the kind she saved for difficult situations like PDA gatherings. Why are they questioning me? She attempted to block the entry, but I ignored her and went inside. The room appeared typical. Even with our bed unmade and her laptop open on the desk, I had the uneasy feeling that I was entering a stage scene. On the phone, "I heard you," I murmured, closely observing her as her eyes briefly opened before squinting in irritation. "It was work. You're acting absurdly. Who is it that calls you?" Amanda leaned against the bedpost with her arms crossed. "Why is it important?" "It's simply marketing's Dana. Due to several campaign deadlines, she is going crazy." I didn't buy it. Not for a moment. Although Amanda was quick-witted, she always had a hint of challenge when she told lies. "Show me your phone." My voice was solid as I said it. Her laugh was harsh now, like glass breaking. "What? Right now? Since when have we been policing each other's phones? Now you don't believe me. Let me see it, please." "Caleb, you're going crazy." Amanda recoiled for the first time in years as I moved closer. Instinctively, she reached for her pocket. "It's too late." I took a firm yet gentle hold on her wrist. "Show me, if it's just Dana." Her jaw tensed, and for a split second, I thought she might let me see. Then she quickly turned on her heel and snatched her arm away. "What do you know? Right now, I don't have to deal with this." She grabbed her handbag and rushed to the door. "Where are you heading?" "To get some air," I called after her. "Perhaps you ought to follow suit." I stood in the center of our bedroom, surrounded by shadows that looked darker than usual as she slammed the door behind her. I stood there looking at the room for a while. She had departed. I then approached her desk gently. She had left her laptop open, the screensaver idly spinning. It was awakened with a single click, and a stream of messages appeared. "I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow." As I continued to browse, I noticed that the messages had nothing to do with my job. They weren't innocent, and they weren't friendly. With my hands shaking and my head racing, I gazed at the screen, trying to make sense of everything. Amanda was telling the truth. For the first time, I understood that she wasn't merely a fracture in the glass. She was planning something behind my back that would tear our family apart. The fracture was complete. My heart was pounding in my ears as I sat there looking at Amanda's laptop messages. It was incredible how the words blended together as I scrolled last night. When he's gone, I can't stop thinking about you. Give me a call. I'll visit. I already miss you. It was not a colleague that sent the messages. Red Ryan is the name on the thread. Just a name, no last name, no picture. One that I didn't recognize affixed to phrases that pressed on my flesh like glass fragments. Despite my urge to yell and hurl her laptop across the room, I refrained. Rather, I sat still, attempting to understand how the woman I believed I knew better than anyone could be someone so different. Amanda had mentioned last night that she was working late to catch up on campaigns that were lagging behind, and the word kept repeating in my mind. We exchanged casual, everyday texts. She even texted me a selfie of herself with a coffee mug while she was seated in her office. I now realized, however, it was not her office. With shaking hands, I clicked out of the forum and viewed her search history. I had the impression that I was intruding on someone's privacy and breaking into their life. It wasn't privacy, though. This included a receipt for supper, steak, and a bottle of wine, as well as hotel reservations, with a booking made 2 days prior under her name at a downtown boutique hotel. My stomach rumbled. This was her plan? I shut down the laptop and got up to walk around the room. I looked at myself in the mirror, but the man staring back at me seemed unfamiliar. He had his jaw clenched, his hands were shaking, and his eyes were bloodshot. Now what? Now what the devil should I do? I was startled out of my reverie by the downstairs front door opening. Amanda had returned. The sound of her footsteps echoing up the stairs made my heart race. She was unaware of what I had discovered. Her expression was serene, as if nothing had happened as she entered the bedroom. With an exaggerated groan, she threw her purse onto the bed. Caleb, you're so worried, I swear. After taking a trip to decompress, I'm now prepared to speak like an adult. I stared at her while trying to talk like an adult and contain the rage that was building inside of me. I spoke in a quiet voice again. Yes, she said, crossing her arms. I don't know what's causing you to act so jealously, but who is Ryan? For a brief moment, the color left her face. Amanda looked like a deer in headlights, but she bounced back fast. Her head was cocked, and a proud smirk twisted her lips. What are you talking about, Ryan? She asked sharply, interrupting her. Never again lie to me. I noticed the messages. I'm excited to see you again, Amanda. On your laptop. It was incredible how Ryan's smile vanished and her face stiffened last night. You looked through my laptop? Don't make this about me, Caleb, my dear, she deflected. I spoke louder, angrier now. Who is he? As if I were some overly theatrical idiot. She rolled her eyes. He's a coworker friend. It's not what you think, even if we've been working late together, and the texts may have seemed flirtatious. Stop the nonsense. I lost my temper. Bookings for hotels, a 2-person dinner. Do you really believe I'm that dumb? She clenched her jaw, her gaze darting about the room as if she were looking for a way out for the first time. It appeared that she was cornered. All right, she responded, raising her hands. Do you want the truth? It's not what you think, but I have been seeing him. I gave a sour laugh. I don't believe it. Amanda, you're cheating on me? What else could it possibly be? She didn't recoil. Instead, she looked at me as if I were beneath her while crossing her arms. You don't understand, Caleb. Lately, you have become quite dull. You're stuck in your routine and preoccupied with your dumb work. I feel alive again because of him. You haven't done it in years. Her remarks were like a blow to my head. I took a step back and stumbled, my thoughts racing. You're holding me responsible for this? Perhaps this wouldn't have occurred if you had given me more attention, she said coldly. I gazed at her, stunned into silence. The woman in front of me wasn't the Amanda I married. She was ruthless, cunning, and unrepentant. The next room is where Lily is, I said, my voice trembling with anger. You're harming us and her at the same time. Amanda shrugged, her lack of concern going beyond what she said. Lily will be all right. Children adjust. Don't exaggerate the situation. What I was hearing was unbelievable. My child's mother and I had built a life together, but the woman was treating our family as if it were disposable. Amanda, let me tell you something. I spoke in a steadier, colder tone. She'll know what you did to us, and she'll remember me, my love. Everything you've done to her, and to me will be paid for. It's time for retribution. She narrowed her gaze, but remained silent. She simply picked up her bag once again and walked out of the room, closing the door behind her. The weight of her betrayal weighed heavily on me as I stood there in solitude. The fact that I couldn't sleep that night was by no means the end of this. I sat on the side of our bed after Amanda stormed out of the room, peering at the doorway as if she might return and tell me it was all a sick joke, but she didn't. The only sounds in the house for hours were the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the sporadic rustle of Lily's blanket as she moved in her sleep. My mind was racing with a frenzied mix of rage, incredulity, and a grim, steely resolve. Amanda didn't apologize. She didn't feel embarrassed. She didn't even care that she had destroyed our lives. All right, I would give her a battle if she desired one. Control was the first step. I was not going to allow Amanda to make decisions for me or Lily in particular any longer. She believed she could be a mother and a wife at the same time while being someone else's lover at night. But she was going to discover how mistaken she was. I got up early the following morning and started to gather my thoughts. Proof. I wasn't a defenseless innocent. I was equipped with tools. Amanda was not as intelligent as she believed. Her phone was ringing non-stop, reminding her of her dishonesty, while she left her laptop unlocked. She had become arrogant and careless. I was intending to take advantage of her error. My first goal was her laptop. I went through all of her communications, capturing screenshots of every flirtatious emoji, every hotel reservation, and every text that implicated her. Ryan wasn't alone. I felt sick to my stomach since there were tidbits of other texts and references to other late-night encounters. I then went to her email. It was easy to figure out her passwords. She had been using the same ones for years. I discovered calendar invitations, pictures, and receipts, evidence she had never anticipated seeing. And then I discovered Ryan's email address. Excellent. I was sitting at the kitchen table sipping my coffee, as if nothing had happened when Amanda came downstairs wearing her go-to pair of morning clothes. The room was filled with Lily's naive speech as she ate her breakfast. Amanda walked in with ease, gave Lily a quick peck on the head, and gave me the same arrogant look she had on last night. Good morning, she said. Her voice was informal, almost jovial. I didn't respond. I watched her while sipping my coffee. She scowled, but Lily cut her off before she could say anything. Can we visit the park today, Daddy? Lily asked. Naturally, my dear, I said, grinning at her. Then I turned to face Amanda and said, Why don't you join us, Amanda? Let's spend some time together as a family. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she paused. Today is going to be a busy day for me. Later work, perhaps? Yes, I spoke in a steady tone. These days, you constantly appear to be so busy. She briefly displayed a look of uneasiness, but she soon got over it and brushed past me to make herself a cup of coffee. It was all right. She was free to act as she pleased. As promised, I took Lily to the park after breakfast, but Amanda stayed behind, saying she had errands to run. I didn't inquire about her destination. At the park, I already had a smart idea. Lily was playing on the swings as I sat on a bench. Using Ryan's email address, I composed a message with the subject important as I plan my next action. Ryan, let's discuss the body. We must get together this evening. You understand that unless we figure out what to do next, this cannot continue. I knew precisely what kind of pandemonium it would unleash, so I pushed send. Amanda was gone when Lily and I arrived home. I didn't bother to text her to find out her location. I looked at the location tracker instead, which I had surreptitiously placed on her phone weeks ago. She was in the heart of the city, not in the workplace. Later that night, she returned home with newly tousled hair and slightly smudged makeup. Despite knowing where she had been, I remained silent. Not quite yet. As usual, she greeted Lily with the same fake enthusiasm, but her face was reserved as she turned to face me. What was the park like? Fantastic. Smoothly, I said. Lily had a great time. That's excellent, she said, avoiding my gaze. I didn't approach Amanda until Lily was asleep. I responded nonchalantly, "Who's Ryan?" as I sat on the couch and watched Amanda browse through her phone across the room. Her face was a mix of astonishment and rage when her head snapped up. "We're going to do this again, Caleb?" "Yes." Leaning forward, I spoke in a chilly tone. "Yes, we are." I showed her the screenshots, her emails, her messages, the hotel reservations. Everything before she could reply. Her face went white. She opened and closed her mouth, trying to think of something to say, but I didn't give her a chance. "You believe that I am unaware of your whereabouts?" My voice rose as I asked. "Do you really believe I have no idea what you've been doing with him?" Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. "There's no point in lying," I said sharply. "I've had enough." Amanda appeared truly frightened for the first time, but her face quickly hardened, and she crossed her arms. "All right." She lost her temper. "Do you want the truth? You know what? Ryan and I have been dating. Caleb, you are to blame. You are suffocating, monotonous, and predictable." I required more. With the weight of her words pressing down on me like a thick blanket, I gazed at her. "This family has been devastated by you," I said silently. Even when my voice is shaking with anger, "you won't leave this alone." A sneer formed on her lips, her terror betraying her defiance. "How are you going to respond to this?" she asked with a venomous tone. I didn't respond. Amanda had no idea what I was capable of, so I didn't have to. That night, Amanda believed she had won. She swept by me with that arrogance when I didn't respond to her challenge. While I sat on the couch, clutching my phone until my knuckles became white, she retreated to the bedroom in armor. I didn't follow her. Instead, I waited until the sounds of the home filtered through the floorboards. The steady tick of the wall clock accompanied the gentle hum of the heater as she made her way upstairs. It seemed like my nerves were frayed, like wires sparking in the dark, and everything was too loud and sharp. I looked down as my phone chimed. It was a response to the email I had sent earlier that day under my alias. "Amanda, I was expecting you would arrive at the same location at around 9 p.m. Ryan, don't keep me waiting." My teeth clenched this time. He believed that he was speaking to her. He believed that they were playing a game. It was okay to sneak about behind my back like a couple of cocky, self-reliant puppeteers. I would meet him, but we wouldn't have the chat he was hoping for. For hours, I sat on the couch and allowed the plan to develop in my head, unaware that her flawless little deception was starting to fall apart. Amanda was in our bed, most likely messaging him under the covers. I was not going to lose my temper. I refused to scream or beg. That would only increase her authority. No, just as she had destroyed my life, I was going to destroy hers piece by piece. I picked up my keys at precisely 8:30 and silently walked out of the house. Ryan had described a bar that was close to a fancy, expensive lounge in the city, with gloomy lighting and exquisite cups for the beverages. I didn't go inside right away when I got there. I chose to observe through the enormous windows while parked across the street. I saw him almost instantly as others came and went. He was tall, well-dressed, and a bit too polished. He occupied a booth in the corner, his demeanor softened. I waited for the moment to develop while he browsed through his phone, waiting for her. I crossed the street at 9 minutes to 9 o'clock and entered the bar, where the aroma of vodka and citrus blended with the quiet murmur of discussion. I strode directly toward him, ignoring the hostess, the click of my shoes on the shiny floor marking my path. When I got to the table, I said, "Ryan," and he looked up, his bewilderment swiftly giving way to recognition, or perhaps simply terror. He knew why I was there, but he had no idea who I was. "We haven't met, I believe," he said cautiously, speaking softly. "We haven't," I answered as I slid into the booth opposite him. "I am Amanda's spouse." Ryan's face went white. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He presumably looked around to see if he could get away without creating a scene. "Do not bother." I spoke in a calm, yet acerbic tone. "We're going to talk for a short while." He put his phone down and swallowed hard. "I didn't preserve it, you see." I continued, cutting him off. "The texts are visible to me. Don't belittle me by acting as though you were unaware of her marriage. I am well informed." Ryan combed his hair with his hand. "I didn't want for this to happen," he stammered, his trust disappearing. "She informed me that you were only remaining together for the child, and that you two were essentially done. I chuckled, a hollow, bitter sound. Did she tell you that? I'll guess. She also claimed that I was domineering, aloof, and possibly even abusive. His silence spoke volumes, louder than any response he could give. Leaning forward, I said, Ryan, let me tell you something. Amanda lies. In order to match whichever version of the truth works best for her and you, she has been lying to us both and manipulating us. She is using you as a pawn in her game. His hands were twitching as he glanced down at his drink. I had no idea, he said. But now you do. No, you didn't. I rose, looming over him. Avoid her at all costs. If I discover that you have texted her once more, I'll see to it that everyone in your life is aware of your true nature. Your family, friends, and job gone. Ryan gave a short nod. He had a pallid face. I understand. I'm finished. I promise. I continued to look at him to make sure he realized how serious I was. Then, without saying another word, I turned and walked out of the pub, leaving him to sit there, feeling the pressure of his choices. A somber sense of contentment descended upon me as I drove home. Amanda had dealt with one aspect of her house of cards, but it was insufficient. Not quite yet. Amanda was sitting on the couch when I entered the house. She wore a facade of irritation with her arms crossed. Where on earth were you? She demanded. I didn't respond. I simply walked by her. I'm going upstairs. I'm speaking to you, Caleb, she yelled, following me to the top of the steps. I paused and looked across at her. I responded icily. You'll find out soon enough. She didn't ask any more questions, but her eyes narrowed and suspicion flashed across her face. I locked the bedroom door and shut it behind me. Amanda's goal this time was to test my limits through games. I wasn't breaking, but she didn't know it. The clock was ticking, and I was planning. The following morning began as any other. Amanda acted as though we hadn't argued the previous evening. As if nothing were amiss, she slipped into her roles as the calm mother and wife. Before sending Lily off to the bus stop, she made her breakfast, talked to her about the hours for school pickup, and gave her a forehead kiss. I sipped my coffee at the kitchen table. It felt uneasy seeing Amanda with a new level of passion. Every gesture and every well-placed grin contributed to the web of dishonesty she had woven around us. She was free to act however she pleased, but I was able to see right through her. Now that Lily was gone, Amanda turned to face me while slipping off her happy mask. Will you tell us about your little disappearance last night? Leaning on the counter and crossing her arms, she posed the question. Not much to discuss, I said, putting down my coffee. Her eyes widened as she looked for cracks in my face, while I handled something that needed to be addressed. What is the intended meaning of that? I reclined in my seat and allowed the quiet to linger. Amanda detested quiet. She thrived on being in charge and directing the story. She didn't have the wheel for the first time in years, and it was obvious. It signifies, I said, I know everything slowly. I've seen the hotel receipts, emails, and messages. Ryan has been contacted. She responded immediately, rapidly covering up a panic attack with rage. What are you? Did you hear me? I said, getting to my feet. I told Ryan exactly what kind of person you are when we first met, and you can guess what he did with you. For the first time, Amanda started to lose her temper. As though she was attempting to take in what I had just said, her mouth opened and then closed. I had every right, and you had none. I lost my temper, interrupting her. Do you believe you can ruin this family? With no repercussions, lie to me and go around with another guy. You assumed I wouldn't defend myself. A grimace wrinkled her lips. Her defiance replaced her panic. Caleb, please fight back. You are pitiful, constantly trying to be the hero and being so predictable, but guess what? You are not a hero, and this is not a fairy tale. I stepped closer and spoke in a frigid, quiet voice. This isn't a fairy tale, Amanda. You are the one who scripted this tragedy. Her confidence wavered. She briefly gave the impression that she was about to strike out to continue the fight, but instead, she pivoted and bounded out of the kitchen, slamming the door behind her. I didn't pay attention. I didn't have to. Instead, I grabbed my phone and called for the second time that day. The first had been to a lawyer, a straightforward divorce lawyer suggested by a friend who had experienced a similar situation. It was addressed to Amanda's supervisor. I didn't inform Amanda that the meeting was set for the afternoon. She believed she had plenty of time to maintain her facade, but I was going to completely upend her world. The receptionist smiled politely at me when I walked into her office. "Am I able to assist you?" "Dana is the reason I'm here." She looked at her screen as I spoke. "Have you got a scheduled appointment?" She's anticipating my arrival. After a minute, I was seated across from Dana, a well-dressed woman who appeared intrigued and a little irritated. "You mean Caleb?" "Amanda's husband," she murmured, reclining in her chair. "I am that." Between us, I set a folder on the desk. "I thought you should be aware of Amanda's late-night job activities, which is why I'm here." Dana scowled. She glanced quickly at the packet. "What are you discussing?" "Crack it open," I said plainly, but she paused. The folder was then opened, and printouts of Amanda's emails and texts to Ryan were found within, together with the hotel receipts and timestamps corresponding to the nights Amanda had claimed to be working overtime. Dana's face became stern. She informed us that she was working extra shifts for the campaign while she read. Her voice was tight as she spoke. "We've been going above and beyond to make room for her." "She wasn't at work," I said flatly. "She was cheating and was doing it with corporate time and money." Dana shut the folder. She tightened her jaw. "I appreciate you alerting me to this." I gave a nod and got up to go. "Here is the revised text with corrections and logical paragraph breaks." Another thing. I inserted a pause at the entrance. "You may want to check her spending records. I have a feeling that she has been lying about other things as well." A sense of grim satisfaction descended on me as I left the building. Amanda believed she could control everyone around her, but her deception was coming undone more quickly than she could weave it. Amanda was waiting for me when I arrived home. Her expression was gloomy, and her arms were crossed. "You were where?" she asked. I tossed my keys onto the counter with a sly smile. Her eyes narrowed, mistrust darting across her face. "You'll know it soon enough." "Caleb, what are you planning?" she demanded. I didn't respond. Instead, I passed her on my way upstairs to see how Lily was doing. The match had been ignited by Amanda. She believed she could manage the fire, but it was now beyond her control. That night, Amanda didn't sleep. Downstairs, I could hear her pacing. Her footsteps sounded like a bomb ticking. She was waiting for me to falter so she could see the holes in my armor, but I refused to let her enjoy herself. I pretended nothing had changed the following morning. I got up early to prepare Lily's breakfast and get her ready for school. Amanda hardly spoke at all. With her coffee in hand, she hovered close to the kitchen island, looking at me as if she were deciphering a coded message. Lily didn't corner me in the hallway until she was on the bus. "Caleb, what on earth are you doing?" Her voice was low and poisonous as she growled. I turned to look at her face. "Be calm. I have no idea what you mean. Don't act foolish around me." She lost her temper. "I know you've been meddling, but you're being quite arrogant and evasive." I gave a shrug. "Interfering? What a fascinating word. Which would you prefer, defending me or perhaps just exposing your deceit at last?" A mixture of terror and rage made her face flush. "You're not as smart as you think," she said, her voice shaking. "No matter what you have planned, it will fail. I've hid my identity." I chuckled. A low, humorless sound caused her to back off. "You haven't concealed anything, Amanda. You've left a trail that is so clear that a blind man could easily follow it." Her confidence wavered, but then she snarled at me and straightened her back. "Do you wish to ruin me? Okay, but I'll take you down with me. Keep urging yourself not to expect that you'll emerge from this unscathed." I brushed by her. "Let's see who remains." I was standing around noon when I received the call. I thought it would be Dana. "Caleb, this is Amanda's supervisor." Her voice clipped as she said, "We've taken the required actions after reviewing everything you supplied me. Amanda isn't working here anymore." Before responding, I took a moment to process the words. "I appreciate that you are taking this seriously. She is fortunate that we are not taking legal action," Dana added. "To put it mildly, the reports were innovative, but our main goal is to move on." "I get it," I replied. "Thank you again." I felt a rush of satisfaction when I hung up. It wasn't entirely about retaliation. Consequences were at issue. Amanda arrived home later than usual that evening, something she had been avoiding for far too long. She had a tight expression and a pallid face. She turned to face me after slamming her purse onto the counter. Her eyes were burning. "You visited my workplace." Her angry voice trembled as she demanded. "Yes, I did," I said, just leaning against the couch. "You were not entitled." Her hands were clenched into fists as she screamed. "Are you aware of what you have done? I'm wrecked by you." I cocked my head, acting as though you had damaged our marriage, or that your falsehoods had been destroying Lily's stability. Amanda sprang forward and gestured at me with a quivering finger. "Caleb, this isn't over. You believe you're very intelligent, but I won't let you win." I spoke again in a cold tone. "Amanda, this isn't a game. You are the one who threw away everything that we have, including our family and our lives." Tears welled up in her eyes, but not the type that came from remorse or sorrow. Those were the tears of someone who detested losing control. "Your self-righteousness has always been evident. Always playing the victim," she spat. "Maybe none of this would have occurred if you had truly been a wonderful husband." Despite the hurt her comments caused, I didn't let her see it. Rather, I steadily straightened my voice. "You are free to place all the responsibility on me. But we both know the truth, and one day Lily will too," I remarked, touching a chord. Amanda's veneer of rage slipped away, revealing something more akin to dread. "You wouldn't," her voice was quieter now. "Would you? Explain to her why her parents are no longer together. The reason she must divide her time between two homes." "Yes, I will. When she's old enough, I'll tell her everything, and she'll see you for who you truly are. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow." Amanda's breathing became labored. For the first time during this entire affair, she appeared truly defeated as her confidence collapsed in front of my eyes. "I will fight you." Her voice trembled as she whispered. "I'll fight you to the death if you try to take her away from me." I moved in closer and spoke in a voice barely audible above a whisper. "Amanda, you have nothing left. Every bridge has been burnt by you. The ashes will eventually settle. It's only a question of time." Her mouth trembled, but she remained silent. Rather, she turned and slammed the door behind her as she left. I felt the weight of the moment as I stood there in quiet. Calm washed over me. It wasn't over yet. It was close, but not quite yet. Amanda believed she wouldn't get burned if she played with fire. She was mistaken. That evening, Amanda did not return home. It didn't surprise me. She had been gradually losing control, and if she lost her career, her self-respect, and her advantage, she would undoubtedly turn to anyone who could provide her even a semblance of approval. Perhaps it was Ryan, or perhaps she was simply driving idly, allowing her rage to take her wherever it pleased. Let her stew in it, good. I had my own moves to make in the meanwhile. After putting Lily to bed, I took out my laptop and started organizing all of the information I had already acquired, including the emails, texts, expense reports, and the chronology of Amanda's falsehoods. This was a custody dispute as much as a divorce. Lily had no right to be a part of Amanda's turmoil. She was worthy of honesty, love, and stability. Everything Amanda had demonstrated, she was unable to supply. I was no longer merely playing defense. I was taking the initiative. Amanda wasn't at home when I woke up the following morning, but her car was in the driveway. Lily was already up, humming to herself while she sat at the kitchen table with her porridge and swung her legs back and forth. "Morning, my love." I ruffled her hair as I spoke. "Hello, Daddy." She smiled broadly as she spoke. "Is Mommy still asleep?" I hesitated to respond, probably not knowing what to say right away. At last, I spoke in a casual tone. "Let's give her some time to relax," I said, but I wasn't going to give her much time to do so. Amanda was sitting in the backyard with a cup of coffee when I arrived there in the middle of the morning. Her face was pale, her hair disheveled, and she appeared exhausted. I was on the verge of feeling terrible for her. Then I recalled Lily's expression, the treachery, and the falsehoods. She was unaware that her world was going to alter forever the night I tucked her in. A difficult night, I asked as I went outside. Amanda avoided eye contact with me. "I have no desire to fight, Caleb." "I don't either. But we need to talk," I said. With a sigh, she placed her coffee on the table. "All right. Say what has to be said." After taking my phone out, I placed it on the table between us. "I have gathered all of this. Evidence of your lies, your misappropriation of business resources, and your affair. I've talked to a lawyer as well. I'm going to file for divorce." Amanda jerked her head up. Her eyes widened. "You mean it?" "Totally. I'm going for full custody of Lily," I said. Anger swiftly replaced the amazement on her face as her jaw hardened. "That is not possible. If you attempt, you won't realize how terrible this will get." "Yes, I do." I spoke in a frigid tone, but I wanted to make one thing plain. "I'm not scared of you, Amanda. Your lies, tantrums, and threats don't frighten me. I've witnessed your potential, and I'll stop at nothing to keep Lily safe." Amanda shook her head and laughed angrily. "Do you truly believe that you are a hero of any sort? You're constantly playing the victim and acting superior to me, even if you're not. You're merely a resentful, pitiful man who finds it impossible to accept that his wife desired more." Even though her words hurt, I kept my composure. Rather, I leaned forward and met her eyes. "This is not how I wanted things to turn out, Amanda." I made an effort to be polite. "I attempted to keep this between ourselves, but you went too far and will now have to deal with the repercussions. You don't have the right to ruin our family and then leave us in ruins." She gave me a scowl. Her fists were so tight on the table's edge that her knuckles were white. "Do you believe that you can take her away from me?" "I don't." I spoke with firmness. The days that followed were filled with paperwork, meetings with my lawyer, and peaceful times with Lily, during which I attempted to protect her from the impending storm. Amanda was unpredictable. She seemed aloof and cold at one point. The following time, she begged for another chance and said that if I would simply end the divorce, everything would be fine, but I didn't. It was unable to. Amanda wasn't merely dishonest. She was greedy, careless, and dangerous. She had already demonstrated that she was prepared to put her personal needs ahead of Lily's, and I wasn't going to allow her to bring our daughter down with her. Amanda once cornered me in the living room after Lily had gone to bed. Her eyes were red-rimmed and filled with something I couldn't quite identify, and she was clutching a glass of wine. "What are you doing?" Her voice was shaking as she asked. "Why can't we simply put it behind us? Get over it." I spoke again, unbelievably. "You didn't make a mistake, Amanda. You made a decision. Our family was destroyed by a sequence of decisions. You can't get past that." I thought she might cry when her lip trembled, but instead, she put down her glass and squared her shoulders perfectly. "Would you like to play dirty? I am also capable of being shady. You are insane if you believe that I will allow you to take Lily away from me. If you think I'm going to allow you to continue dragging us through your mess, you're the one with delusions." I got up, towering over her. Tension permeated the room. Like a loaded rifle, the unsaid words dangled between us. I wasn't breaking, despite Amanda's attempts to intimidate me. "Never ever. Remember what I stated. You'll pay for all you've done to me, Lily, and this family," I told her as I turned to go. "Amanda, revenge starts when you lose everything you believed you could keep." I didn't care that her silence followed me up the stairs. I had all the pieces, but the game was far from done. Just as I had planned, her confidence was shaken. Amanda's world started to fall apart. Her most deadly weapon was always beginning to break under the strain of all she was trying to balance. She was unemployed, unsupported, and unsure of how to take back control. I refrained from boasting. I refrained from rubbing her face in it. I remained composed, strategic, and proactive. For her, that was much worse, since it made her reach for anything to hold on to. She thrashed. I made sure that every action I took was flawless as I constructed my case. The custody hearing was drawing near rapidly. My attorney had submitted the necessary paperwork for emergency custody, pointing to Amanda's instability, unpredictable behavior, and carelessness. The image created by the evidence I had acquired was devastating. Her careless use of resources and blatant disregard for Lily's welfare were evident late at night. Amanda was going crazy because she knew she was falling behind. One evening, when I was reviewing documents in the living room, Amanda stormed in, her face flushed with rage. "Don't you think you're really smart?" She lost her temper. "Do you believe you have me in a tight spot?" Calm as ever, I put down the papers and gazed up at her. "Amanda, I don't think so. I am aware of that." Her chuckle, which did not reach her eyes, was bitter and piercing. "You believe that I am being ruined by justice. Removing Lily. You're as self-centered as you say you are. I am self-centered. I stood up again. Lying to your family is selfish. Selfishness means prioritizing your needs. Your kids. Being selfish is believing you can have it all and ruin the relationships with those who trusted you. You no longer have the authority to change the story, Amanda. So don't even dare say that to me. At her sides, her hands balled into fists. Caleb, you're going to regret this. I'll see to that. I moved in closer, lowering my voice to a perilous silence. Know this, Amanda. The one who will regret it is you. You believe that you could deceive me, harm Lily, and then turn and leave. Examine your surroundings. And that's what you did. You, not me. She stumbled for a second. Her breath caught, and I could see the cracks appearing on her painstakingly constructed mask, but her visage hardened again in an instant. She tightened her teeth and muttered, "You'll never win." I looked straight at her. I'd done so already. Amanda's next move the following morning was just as frantic as I had anticipated. She tried to pull Lily out early by showing up at her school without warning. Fortunately, I had already filed an order to prevent her from making decisions regarding Lily's schedule on her own and informed the administration about the custody problem. I rushed over as soon as the school called. Amanda was yelling at the principal in the front office when I got there. "You're not understanding." She was speaking loudly and in a frenzy. "Her mother is me. I can't just refuse to take her." "In fact," I said as I entered the room, "yes, they can." Amanda's world is lighting up around her eyes. "Why are you here?" "Defending Lily." I spoke aggressively. I handed the principal a copy of the court order as I turned to face her. "As you can see, Amanda cannot take Lily out of school without my permission." The principal nodded, her face hard yet indifferent. "All we're doing is obeying the rules, Andrews." Mrs. Amanda gave me a look as if she wanted to tear me to pieces, but I resisted. "Amanda, you're going crazy," I said silently. "It has nothing to do with Lily. You're attempting to regain control, but it's too late." Her face sagged for a second. Amanda approached me in the kitchen that night after I put Lily to bed, but she suddenly turned on her heel and rushed out, slamming the door behind her. Her eyes flashed with genuine alarm. This time she was more subdued. "You don't have to do this, Caleb," she whispered in a low, tremulous voice that sounded almost imploring. "It's possible that we can find a solution for Lily." My back was to the counter. "I'm crossing my arms for Lily. Every time you lied, you had plenty of opportunity to consider Lily. You made your decision each time you put your wants ahead of her needs. I'm building mine now." I saw a glimpse of the woman I had once loved as tears filled her eyes, but it was insufficient. "No more. She is also my daughter, and I'll never keep her from you," Amanda muttered. "But she deserves better than what you've given her," I stated forcefully. "She deserves a father who prioritizes her, is honest, and provides stability. Is it true that you have done that?" Amanda remained silent. She remained still. She could have made an excuse, but her silence spoke more. I stopped at the doorway as I passed her. "Amanda, this is no longer about retaliation. The goal here is to act in Lily's best interests. You've already lost more than you think if you're unable to see that." I didn't turn to face her, but her tears followed me up the stairs. The fall was nearly finished. For days, Amanda and I were in complete quiet. The silence wasn't the strained, seething sort. It was as empty as the silence following a hurricane that has trampled over everything in its path. She hardly spoke to me, and when she did, her words were sharp and cutting. I anticipated what would happen. Amanda wasn't the kind to just give up easily. She was desperate, really desperate. People acted in a desperate manner. It happened late one evening when I was going over court filings for the custody hearing in the living room. Amanda's hair was unkempt as she walked in. Her eyes were swollen and black. She had a glass of wine in one hand and her phone in the other. "I will not allow you to prevail," she said. I could hear the little slur in her voice. I gave her a disinterested glance. "Get into bed. You're making a fool of yourself, Amanda." She let out a shrill, nearly insane laugh. "You find this embarrassing. Hold off until the court hears your true character as a husband." I put the papers down and arched an eyebrow. "What are you discussing?" She held up her phone with a sly smile. "I captured every debate, every dispute, and every instance in which you weren't flawless, Caleb. Do you believe a judge will support someone who bangs doors, shouts at his wife, and exhibits mental instability? I gazed at her, feeling the impact of what she had said descend upon me. Amanda wasn't playing a bluff. She was using every scrap of leverage she could find to make a weapon out of it. You're amazing, I spoke quietly. You still believe you can blame me for this after everything you've done? I can. You're absolutely correct, she lost her temper. Caleb, you're not the protagonist of this tale. You are merely a resentful, pitiful man who is attempting to punish me for having the audacity to demand more. I got up and loomed over her even more. You were hoping for more. You sacrificed everything for Amanda, your family, your spouse, and your beloved daughter. What a liaison. A dream. You're not looking for more. You desire devastation. Gripping the wine glass, as if it were the only thing keeping her rooted, her palm shook. I briefly believed she might hurl it at me. You believe you are so morally upright. You have no idea what it's like, she whispered, her tears collecting in her eyes. You have no idea how oppressive being with you was. I needed to feel alive once more. Even though her words hurt, I kept my composure. How does it feel now, Amanda? I leaned closer, my voice as frigid as ice. How does it feel to see everything you've worked so hard to create burn down because you were unable to maintain your lies? You experience life. For the first time, her breath caught, and I could see how deeply she regretted, or perhaps it was only that she was caught. You're a monster, she said. Her voice wavered. No, I said. You despise what you see in the mirror, which is me. Amanda made her last desperate move the following morning. Lily was taken by her. The house was deserted when I woke up. Lily didn't have her bed made. Amanda's automobile was nowhere to be seen, and her beloved stuffed animal was gone. I called her phone as panic tore at my chest, but it went straight to voicemail. Lily wasn't there when I contacted the school next. I realized then that Amanda had fled. I called my lawyer right away. Next, the police. The custody order was unambiguous. Without my permission, Amanda couldn't take Lily, especially not as the night grew into a torturous day. My lawyer did everything he could to work with the authorities to get an emergency order for Lily's return while we followed her whereabouts. Every time my phone buzzed or the floorboards creaked, I paced the house all day, my heart pounding. Late that night, I finally received the call that Amanda had been located. She was hiding away in a budget motel outside of town, with Lily dozing off in her car's back seat. The police were already on the scene when I got there. They were arguing with Amanda. Tears stained her face, and her tone was desperate. "She's my daughter," she yelled. "Mommy, you can't take her away from me." The tiny, quivering voice brought me to a halt. Lily looked out of the vehicle, her eyes full of tears meeting mine. "Daddy," she screamed as she ran to me. As she sobbed onto my shoulder, I picked her up and held her close. My rage vanished in that instant, replaced by a deep, protective love. "It's all right, my love," I muttered. "I'm present. I got you." With her hands chained behind her back, Amanda observed from a distance. "Please." She looked defeated and shattered. Her voice cracked as she said, "Please don't take her away." My heart was fixed on her, hefty but determined. "All of this, Amanda, you did to yourself," I said as her tears reverberated in the chilly night air. She broke down. That night, I tucked Lily into bed and stroked her hair as the cops escorted Amanda away. She was falling asleep. At least the worst of the storm was over. Lily was safe and Amanda was gone. I reflected on everything that had happened up to this point, including the betrayal, the lies, and the pandemonium while I sat in the silence of the living room. Everything had collapsed, leaving only ashes in its wake. But in those ashes, I saw a ray of light, an opportunity to start again and build a life for Lily and me, free from Amanda's dishonesty and manipulation. She would pay for everything she did to us, and she would never forget my love. It wasn't over yet, it was just the start. There was silence in the courtroom, and the tension was so great that a knife might pierce it. I was seated across from Amanda. Her formerly certain manner had devolved into silent despair. Despite having a lawyer by her side and being well-dressed, her eyes betrayed her. She no longer fought for Lily. She was battling for what was left of her life. She had used her own hands to tear it apart. Andrew, my attorney, took the stage to make our final remarks. He was unyielding, straightforward, and composed. "Your Honor," he said steadily, embodying everything I needed him to be. One parent is not attempting to distance themselves from the other in this scenario. It's about giving Lily the greatest environment possible. Our research demonstrates a pattern of dishonesty, instability, and decisions that put one's own interests before a child's welfare. During this whole journey, my client has stayed strong, determined, and dedicated to Lily's welfare. He is the dad who gives Lily the consistency, integrity, and attention she needs. Amanda's attorney protested, attempting to portray me as domineering, uncompromising, and even spiteful, but their claims were undermined by the evidence. The texts, the hotel receipts, and the careless choice to kidnap Lily against her will. It all combined to create an unavoidable picture. It seemed as though the breath had been drawn out of the room when the judge finally spoke. In light of the testimony and the evidence, I believe Mr. Andrews is more suited to give Lily the secure environment she requires. Mr. Andrews will be given sole custody, while Mrs. Andrews will have the right to supervise visitation. Amanda's poise broke, and she let out a loud gasp. She shook her head, tears running down her cheeks, as her lawyer leaned down and whispered something. Her voice cracked as she said, "Caleb, don't do this, please. Please don't take her away." I got to my feet and stared at her. I briefly glimpsed the Amanda I used to love. Amanda was no longer with me. Instead, I hardly recognized the lady who had shared my dreams, laughed with me, and helped me create a life. "Amanda, this isn't about me," I said silently. "It has to do with Lily. This is not fair to her." As she wailed, her cries resonating in the silence, the bailiff escorted her out of the courtroom. The weeks that followed were a blur of changes. The new house Lily and I moved into was smaller and calmer, with a yard where she could play. By enrolling her in the same school, continuing her play dates, and fostering a loving and humorous environment in our home, I tried to keep her routine as consistent as possible. Initially, she kept inquiring about Amanda and when her mother would return. "Does my mother miss me?" she asked. I replied gently, "Of course, your mother loves you very much." I stroked her hair and whispered, "But she made some decisions. This implies that she is unable to be with us constantly at this time. You're not to blame." "All right." Over time, the questions became less frequent. Lily began to giggle and smile more. She was stronger and more resilient than I had realized. Amanda's visits under supervision were stressful, initially. She arrived on schedule, immaculately dressed, beaming, and greeted Lily with exaggerated joy, but Lily was apprehensive and cautious. She held on to me when Amanda showed up. Her tiny hands clutched my shirt as though I might abandon her. I didn't. During their visits, I observed discreetly and carefully from the background. The cracks were still present just below the surface, despite Amanda's best efforts to hide them. Amanda once glanced at me during a particularly tense encounter. Something that appeared to be regret entered her eyes. "Caleb," she said softly, "I realize I made a mistake." As Lily moved aside to get her coloring book, Amanda continued, "Do you believe there will ever be an opportunity to make up for the hurt I caused you?" I looked her in the eye, my face unreadable. "Make it right?" "No, Amanda. We can do better for Lily's sake, but there are some things that cannot be changed." Slowly, she nodded, sagging her shoulders for Lily. Although it wasn't forgiveness, it was a positive move. As the months stretched into a year, my life started to come together. I saw Lily's laughter fill the voids left by Amanda's absence as she grew stronger and more self-assured. Being the father Lily wanted me to be gave me a new rhythm and purpose, while Amanda retreated farther into the background. Her visits decreased in frequency, and she called occasionally. It was no longer my responsibility to save her. She was attempting to start over on her own. I closed that chapter when Lily gazed up at me with her large, trusting eyes one evening as I put her to bed. Softly, she said, "I do adore you, my dear. My favorite person in the entire world is you." I leaned down to kiss her forehead, tears stinging my eyes. Lily, I also adore you. I always knew I had made the right decision at that very moment. Amanda had attempted, but failed, to shatter me. She had misjudged the power that came from standing up for what was rightfully yours and from loving someone more than yourself. She would live with the repercussions of what she had done and remember my love. But I was done looking back. I had my future ahead of me with Lily.